Hello, it's Omar Oakes, Editor-in-Chief of The Media Leader, and welcome to The Media Leader podcast once again. Today, we have a special episode for you. Can we rediscover the joy of digital? That was the question posed to the media and advertising industry last week by the IAB UK's annual Engage conference. Ella Sagar, our reporter, spoke to the IAB UK CMO James Chandler, who is, as usual, a master of ceremonies at the IAB Engage conference, and he does a really great job, by the way. I've been to Engage many times, and it's always a really well put together event. They talked about the highlights and key takeaways from the event last week. Ella was there, and we'll post links to her stories on themedialeader.co.uk in the show notes. So the joy of digital, it's a tough one, right? When there's so much negative news all the time about the impact of social media on mental health, or, I don't know, the opacity and so much around online advertising, or artificial intelligence. People worried about jobs in the creative economy and what internet we're going to be left with when these language learning models are spewing out content all over the world. It's not as if there wasn't enough online content to go around before ChatGPT came along, but oh well. I have to say, so the Media Leader covers these issues quite closely, and for all the negative press, we have to remember that the internet is an amazing thing. We mustn't take for granted how mind-blowingly extraordinary it is that right now, instead of listening to me and my slightly nasal, slightly camp voice right now, you could turn this off and you could, on your phone, buy almost any book you want right now and have it electronically delivered to you within seconds. You could, right now, listen to any popular song almost that's ever been recorded and get it within a few seconds. TV and movies, we haven't quite worked that out yet, but I'm sure someday, the Ultra Bundle is coming. And yes, education, networking, so much opportunity has been created with a global information sharing system that is the internet, and we mustn't forget how important and special it is. I say that because forums like the IAB Engage conference are important. Now, this isn't like a sponsorship deal. They're not paying for me to say this to you right now, but I do happen to think it's true. We need bodies like the IAB to be strong voices for the industry. And if you work in this industry and you want to make the internet, online advertising better, engage with them and their members. We don't want to feel the need to always talk about regulation, even though regulation is important. We have to remind ourselves also that this is the creative and communication sector, the media and advertising. So it shouldn't be beyond our wit to use our charms, to use our influence, to use our creativity to help create a better online media ecosystem. The internet is not going away, nor should it. And as I constantly say, media needs advertising to make it accessible for everyone, not just rich people who can afford multiple subscriptions. That's why this is so important. So with that, let's talk about the joy of digital. I bring you Ella and James Chandler. Ella began by asking James why joy in advertising is so important.
It goes back to a feeling that we had probably a couple of years now. And this hypothesis that clearly digital advertising has gone through a whole stage of being this sort of new, challenging newcomer to, a bit of a problematic teenager to now being fully fledged, the biggest, where all the money is going. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. So it's grown up kind of very, very quickly. And in that process, we felt that at the very start, digital was seen as this incredibly exciting space. Everything was kind of new, having to sort of relearn things. It was stuff that we kind of knew that was different, like telly or print or radio, but in a slightly different form. We're able to do lots of things with it. Somewhere along the way, our feeling was the kind of the joy and the magic that we loved at the start had gone somewhere. It sort of dissipated. So we did a big study and we talked to advertisers, and what we found out was it basically boiled down to two things: this idea of unease about the pace of change and how fast things are going, and also this futility mainly around creativity, that they don't feel they've got much agency in this world of algorithms and increasingly AI, that actually they feel they can put their kind of stamp on things. I can get a program to write me 1,000 different creative ads based on who's watching and what they're looking like. And the kind of the art of advertising was missing. So Joy the bear and Joy the concept, I guess, is our reaction to try and remedy that.
Just like IAB UK's chief digital cheerleader, Joy. Say hey, Joy.
I'm so sorry.
She's often misunderstood.
And rather than just have a campaign which ran at the end of last year, which features this 8-foot bear, which was great and is doing a job for us, we've thought really carefully about how we weave the joy of digital into everything we do. And Engage, being our big flagship event, kind of made sense for us that it would take centre stage there.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting that there was that, like, from that research into how advertisers are feeling about things, and obviously IAB's got members as well, and I wondered if that fed into it in the kind of conversations that you're having with them about where is the joy and where did it go?
At various points, if I even think about my career at the IAB in the last 7 years, at various points there have been big moments that have happened which have had advertisers questioning the integrity or the performance of digital. Big things around brand safety, things around fraud, ad blocking. I mean, lots of these big kind of momentous things that we've had to tackle. None of those things are particularly joyous. Having to put frameworks and standards around things like even being a trade body in a weird way where we're associated with those things isn't a particularly joyous message. So we've really had to think about not only advertisers, but I guess to think about members as well. And I would say, on the whole, they've kind of really embraced it because, you know, joy, if you think about advertising in joy, lots of the feed that we have is about incredible television creative or watching your 90-second ad on a cinema screen, whether it's audio, the relationship that we've had with radio or print, you know, beautifully crafted coffee table magazines with amazing ads in it. There's lots of joy in those things. We felt it was just kind of missing in digital, and we felt it was sort of incumbent on us as the trade body to try and insert that back in, or as we articulated, get people to rediscover it. We think it was there at the start, but maybe it's kind of gone somewhere else.
One of the things that you were saying is kind of your plea to people at the conference was, can ads be as joyful as the content that they support? Because advertising is essential to be able to, for media owners to produce the content that we love. And you talked about a 2-tier dystopian internet, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, that was... and I don't think we're going there, but I think it's an interesting articulation of if we don't realise as an industry that we're... You know, ultimately our lifeblood is advertising. We don't always, the model isn't perfect. I said, you know, it's imperfect model, but it kind of works. Like, no one's shown me anything that's kind of better. The only alternative is subscription, where you get rid of ads completely. But of course, in this dystopian future, you've got a version of the internet which is subscription based, and the people that can afford it pay it, and it's wonderful and seamless, and there aren't any, you know, in inverted commas, annoying ads that are getting in your way. But for the overwhelming majority of people, they would be stuck with a different version of the internet that's just 10% content, 90% ads. And the really awful ads, you know, the ones that we all hate, the ones that we're trying to stamp out and discourage. It's just a useful articulation, not for us to get, I think, to forget that our industry is sustained by advertising. And whilst it's not always perfect, we can kind of, this is my sort of clarion call at the end, was we collectively have it all in our power. Our advertisers have the control and choice on where they put their money. Media owners, publishers, platforms can control how they want to sell it, the data that they want to use, the signals that they want to put in. So it's not as if we're waiting for this sort of divine intervention from somewhere else. I think as an industry, we've got the ability to make ads pretty amazing and not forget that it's the ads that are supporting lots of the stuff on the internet that brings us joy, the lolsy videos, the connection that stuff brings. So it was more sort of putting some smelling salts under the nose of the people there, going, come on, let's not just forget that, you know, ads are sustaining us and our careers and our livelihoods.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also it's the idea that the ads are at their best really creative and intentional and smart and can be very memorable. And so I think maybe in the day-to-day people might not realize that, or they don't realize all the work that goes into an ad, into a good ad.
Yeah, 100%. It really addresses this futility point that we found in that a sense that advertisers, maybe creatives as well, just don't feel they've got this agency in the same way that they maybe crafted a 30-second telly ad all the way from the storyboard and all the way through, there is this sense that the machines are doing lots of the heavy lifting, and I just don't think that's the case. I mean, and we probably heard loads of examples in the day. Jeff and Lindsay from MediaCom talking about the joy of weird. They used loads of examples of where really lots of those ideas could only ever work in digital, and you kind of heard it go through and through. Sam Crowther talking about podcasting, lots of these things are unique. I think if I was a graduate getting into, an art creative graduate, what we want is this industry to feel like an incredibly exciting place to come and do creative work. Because I think it is. Look at the canvas that you've got in digital. I mean, it's kind of amazing. The possibilities are endless. So the whole point around this is our industry, but actually maybe thinking about those, being attractive enough for people to want to come and work in it as well. We probably won't do that if it feels like it's ad blockers and brand safety all the time.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of sides to it. And I guess with AI, and there is that kind of fear and unease element of, is it going to take away the human and creative aspects to what people do in a wide range of jobs? But a few brands, I think Taco Bell is maybe one example, that they are in their creative saying this was created by an artist, not by an AI, or it was assisted by AI. So it's always going to be a human assisted by AI rather than the other way.
And Taco Bell have got like so much skin in the game. I remember that amazing. They did the snap filter, which was literally just turning your head into a taco. I mean, there's no like long thought over that. It's just this incredibly joyful thing that you can do. You're putting the brand on someone's putting it on their head and sharing it with their friends. I mean, it's like, you can't do that anywhere else. So I think, brand like Taco Bell are amazing and probably thinking about it all in the right way.
Yeah, I think a couple of the talks that you mentioned, like the Jeff DeBecker and Lindsay Jordan, was one of my favorites as well. Discovering that Jeff DeBecker is into extreme dishwashing videos was hysterical.
And this is a rallying cry today for being a bit more creative, because so much advertising is trying so hard to do things right, to conform to category conventions, to be rationally getting across the right messages, that actually they all look a bit the same. And by trying so hard not to offend anyone, they appeal to no one. And in fact, according to System 1, one of my favourite research companies, System 1 say that nearly half of all ads elicit a neutral emotional response.
But another talk at IAB Engage, which was kind of speaks to that creativity idea, was by Dara Nasir, who's the current VP of Global Sales at WeTransfer Advertising and the former UK MD at Twitter, and who he was speaking to making the internet as fun as it's ever been, and in light of extreme dishwashing and Taco Bell filters. Let's just hear from him on that for a moment.
12 years ago, I started working at a company called Twitter, currently known as X, right? Now, they were much simpler days back then. Everything seemed much more fun. You didn't have to have an opinion. You didn't have to take a side. You could be, and it was the same on Insta, it was the same everywhere. You could just be creative. You could be adventurous, curious, interactive, chaotic maybe, but it was more fun, I think. And I think that what we used to say is that social media is very much like holding a mirror up to society. And society, I think, is less fun. It's, you can say a lot's happened since 2012, politically, economically, and it is more divisive. So let's make everything fun again, right? Because that's the key.
Dara's articulation was, advertising often reflects the world that we live in life. And I think his point was, from the time that he was at Twitter and created that, sort of amazing culture and people wanting to do great stuff, the world has become a bit more polarized, a bit more serious, a lot more political. And maybe the reflection of the advertising is a bit of a reflection of the world, in that it at times doesn't feel like a particularly joyful place. Again, and his message was certainly, it's kind of in our gift as creatives and people that work within this industry to try and address that. And I thought Dara was brilliant, and Dara's probably listening to this, so it sort of loathes me to say it, but there's no doubt of what he and David Wilding and Bruce, the culture they built at Twitter all of those years ago. Twitter was never the biggest, it was never the most efficient, but they were probably the most joyful in terms of the team and the product. Everyone else was getting obsessed with performance marketing, and Twitter was all about brand. They worked really well with big branding things like telly. They were about moments in culture. And I wondered what Dara would show up which Dara would sort of show up the other day. And, you know, it was amazing. It was exactly the same Dara who we know and love from before. And we transfer in a weird way reminded me of those early days of Twitter, and it's a very creative platform. I mean, one thing I didn't realize, which he told us, it's kind of built by creatives, which is an amazing thing. And it's this amazing canvas. It's just like, if you could create like the most incredible digital advertising experience tomorrow, that would be pretty close, I think. Just this, like, you know, you're not jostling for viewability or with other ads or anything like that. So I you know, it kind of makes sense where I was there, but it did remind me of the kind of the parallels of perhaps when digital advertising and the world, moreover, was in a slightly more joyful place. Now, we probably can't change the world and we can't change what's happening in it, but we can certainly try to certainly try and reinstill some joy in the stuff that we're doing. And the ads bit, I guess, is the bit that we're in control of.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was interesting what Dara was saying about holding, like social media holding a mirror up to society, and that, you know, sometimes with maybe in advertising, a lot of the news, or just in the world generally, a lot of the news has been about the economy and the cost of living crisis and all of these things. So it can be harder when it does seem like it's all negative.
And you know, we are bang in the middle of election season. I doubt you're going to see much joy in all of that. You may see some, but you know, just watching the debate the other night, looking at some of the stuff that's in my feeds, looking at how things are being reported, there isn't much kind of joy in there. And there'll be a lot of election money, no doubt, and political advertising that we kind of see. So that's the backdrop for us. But again, I think it's just reiterating that, yes, that sort of thing's happening, but, you know, is there a joyful way of doing it? And Jeff and Lindsay showed that sort of amazing Cilla Black example from TikTok.
What's amazing, I think, about digital is that it absolutely facilitates this. Not just stalking the rock, although it is very handy for that. It facilitates us as multi-hyphenated humans. It allows us to embrace whatever it is we're into, however weird, however wonderful. 76% of the UK belong to a digital subculture or community. That's 76%. And these subcultures are not small, niche communities. They are massive. This is the new mass media. So whether it is extreme dishwashing, Jeff, you're not alone. 22 million posts for extreme dishwashing on TikTok. Oh my God. Dark academia, witch talk, woodworking, theatre kids, whatever you're into, you can find millions of people who are also into this thing online, however weird, however wonderful.
Which is a nice zig to when everything else is kind of zagging. So yeah, we do have it in our gift for sure.
Yeah. I think that the fact that the Labour Party have been on TikTok for about 3 weeks, and they've obviously got someone on the team who's very tapped into that culture and can be a bit irreverent. And what Jeff and Lindsay were saying was that brands need to do something, embrace the weird, do something different. Don't just do something like be scared to do something. Try something. It might not work, and then see what else works. And maybe that's something. It's like a bravery thing as well, because it, you know, maybe doing it's one of the, you know, the saying of zig and zag. It's easy to say, but much, much harder to do.
Yeah, totally. I love the Tesco example they showed with the greeter who was greeting people as they're coming in with their club card.
Then Tesco have now got an ongoing content programme for the club card to help people through the cost of living crisis, highlighting the benefits of Tesco's club card, but doing it in a way that leans into this culture of being a bit strange, a bit weird on TikTok. So they've had Ryland dancing. They've had Ryland actually inside a checkout, so popping up and engaging with you when you scan your club card, and this wonderful little piece of activity.
Welcome to Tesco, madam. Your hair is gloriously unkempt due to the wind. It's windy outside, isn't it? Do you know what hasn't moved? 1,000 low everyday prices fixed till Easter. Sterling trolley work. I've seen you move every rack into position like a cowboy herding cattle. Do you have a club card?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a club or a card, it's an app, but who doesn't love those?
It's like, you know, Tesco is a big, if not the biggest FMCG. I'd imagine when they want to be, they've got pretty strict guidelines and they're this big kind of corporate beast. They're fighting for share. So you're right, for an organisation like that to kind of look at it in a different way and behave like that on something like TikTok and have this incredible guy greeting people, you know, sounds easy, but I'd imagine it probably isn't. But, you know, the payoff is there for those that do.
There were about 11 sessions overall, like 10 minutes each. So a lot to pick from, but I was wondering, we've talked about a couple of them, but for you, what was the most surprising or the kind of standout that made you think slightly differently about advertising, the state of joy in advertising, or just advertising more widely?
I think there were two. So Christine Armstrong, who's this amazing voice on the future of work. She's a vlogger and a researcher. She used to work in our industry. She left, wrote a book, and is now thinking about the future of work. Her whole shtick is now on productivity, and her 10 minutes was really a bit of a two fingers up to this toxic productivity that we're probably seeing in our LinkedIn feeds. The idea that you need to wake up at 4, do multiple ice baths, meditate. All of this stuff is priming you to be a high performer at work. The bit that she's saying that forgets is, well, what about your life outside of that?
And honestly, I think for a while I probably believed it. I certainly worked like this when I worked in ad agencies. And then I sort of watched what happened to the people around me who were working in this kind of way. I watched people literally collapse around me. I have a really visceral memory of being in my office at 9 o'clock in the morning, and a young colleague in his early 30s had been working, 14, 16, 18-hour days for about 3 months. He was sobbing and sobbing and sobbing on my desk. He could barely function. We had to get him out. We had to get him a lot of help. He took a lot of time off. And just looking around and thinking, what are we doing? What are we doing? And two colleagues that I work with really closely, they both died, 20, 25 years before retirement, working like this. And I can't say that it's the way that they worked that was a contributing factor. I'm not a doctor. But when we look at those end-of-life surveys and say, what do you wish you'd done? I don't think this is what people generally describe.
Where's I bet Tim Cook is, and when's the last time he vacuumed his hall or stood in a Sainsbury's local at 4:30 thinking about what dinner they're going to have? So she's saying you've got to get that balance right, which I think is probably right. If we're not joyful in our roles, how on earth are we going to channel that through the kind of the work that we're doing? So she talked about balance. She talked about the overwhelm of Slack and notifications. But really, I think finding a job that gives you some energy, that you kind of enjoy, that has purpose, and you make sure that, you're nicely balancing that outside of work. So, I thought that was a very interesting, different take on joy. And then I thought Stephen, who's the CEO of the AA, he came and talked about trust and how when he joined the AA in 2017, trust in advertising was at an all-time low. We were bottom of the pile in terms of profession, lower than estate agents and politicians.
That's not where you want to be, no.
That's not where you want to be. And thank God that's not where we are. We're at least off the bottom. We're out of the relegation zone. Politicians are squarely bottom, which is sort of predictable. And he talked about that difference really being young people who are starting to trust advertising more. But of course, their experience of advertising in some senses is almost exclusively through a digital lens, so that they're not consuming lots of analog stuff. It's kind of digital. And that for me, I thought was really interesting. One, I think it's an attractiveness of our industry overall, like pretty hard to attract people if you're bottom of a very untrusted place. But I thought it was interesting that, often it's perhaps digital and the internet that's cited as the thing that's causing the problems with trust, but actually it's young people and their consumption of mainly digital that's improving it. So I thought he was great as well. There were no surprises for me because, they're all like brilliant speakers. Trying to get them to do it in 10 minutes is the kind of the challenge. And I think they all kind of rose to it.
In the point around productivity, I think there was, I saw an ad actually recently, which was like, all before 9 a.m. I've done this, and I've done this, and I'm such a boss. And the advertising just made me feel bad, and I was like, I haven't done that before 9 a.m.
Exactly.
I've dressed myself and I've got to work and I've eaten breakfast. That's it. That's all I've done.
Winning.
Maybe that's something, there should be like a response to that on the productivity side of things and performance. And then on trust, my colleague Jack actually wrote about the latest findings on trust in advertising. So if you guys want to read up any more on that, then you can find that on our website, along with a couple of write-ups of IAB Engage.
Sensational write-ups, yeah.
So I think that is all we have time for today. So thank you so much, James, for joining me to chat about joy in advertising, and maybe this time next year we'll be in a different place.
Yeah, we'd love to. It's a pleasure. Thanks, Ella.
Thanks again for listening to the Media Leader podcast. If you like what you hear, guess what? You can read our stuff at our website, themedialeader.co.uk, where you can sign up to our daily newsletter in the UK of analysis, opinion and commentary about what's going on in media and advertising. You can also find us on YouTube. We are posting video interviews and clips from our live events. And don't forget to check out our LinkedIn page, which is often a very interesting way to see what people in the industry are saying about our articles and the issues we write about. Anyway, get back to work. Catch you next time. Bye bye.